everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. It is Wednesday, June 7th, and we are going to be talking about Notre Dame recruiting. Big surprise, Jamie. We're going to talk about recruiting. We're going to talk about some new commitments that Notre Dame picked up over the last few days. We're going to talk about who is on campus right now, who's going to be on campus, and then looking forward to next weekend's official visit list. And then we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Irish invasion. We're going to talk about who Jamie liked. Apparently, the defensive backs were a big hit for Jamie, and I'm excited about that, to talk about Notre Dame DBs or possible Notre Dame DBs. So we'll talk about all those things. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If this is your first time catching the show, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We did get over 6,000 subscribers last week. I'm very excited about that. So let's on the upward trajectory towards 7K, Jamie. We want to get the 7K subscribers as soon as possible. Hopefully before. I mean, look, I want to dream big, Jamie. Hopefully before fall camp starts, we can get into 7,000 subscribers. That would be great. Grow the show, all those fun things. And yeah, if you want to catch us on our audio form, hit us up on or find us on our podcast feeds. Links are in the description below of this video. And speaking of recruiting, Jamie, did you know that I was a recruiter in a previous life? I was a corporate recruiter. We had corporate clients, and they wanted to outsource their job searches, and so what we would do is we would recruit for candidates. Did you know that about me?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah,
it's a whole thing. That's what I did.
I know it is big business. Yeah,
it is big business, and it was a whole prior to me getting into education. That was what I did, and what I had to do every single day is I had to go in and wear a nice dress shirt, Jamie. And I wish at the time there was an ESQ clothing that I could tap into to get my custom dress shirts so I could wear them every single day. And I didn't. And part of the thing about going into work, wearing a dress shirt and all that sort of thing is when you come home, you got to transition into clothes that you want to wear. And the nice thing about ESQ bamboo shirts from Ga Wang is that you don't have to rush to get on clothes that are comfortable, because it is comfortable. That is how nice Ga's custom bamboo shirts are. They have stretch, they feel soft, they feel light, odor resistant, wrinkle resistant, and as we all know, Jamie, machine washable. Don't have to spend money on dry cleaning, which is very important, given inflation and all those other things, right? Dry cleaning is going up just like everything else. So you get to save on that with ESQ shirts. So check out ESQclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game. Jamie, welcome back, man. I missed you. It was hard. I did the show on Monday without you, and it was tough. You were in South Bend checking out Irish Invasion. Welcome back. Happy to have you back, my man.
Oh, I'm good. I'm glad to be back home. So it's good to be there. I mean, it was a pretty good camp. Lot of targets there. Obviously, there was also Cam Williams worked out. Mike Gilbert worked out. So that was always nice to see when there's current commits there. And it was good, and it was a good time. And then we had Christian and Matt and Drew Mentok were there, and it was good. It was a whole party.
Yeah, and speaking of Drew, I'm going to be talking to him on Friday about some of the summer enrollees, right? So there's a bunch of early enrollees that came in the spring. We're going to be talking to Drew about the summer enrollees. He did a profile on each of them. It's going to be really interesting. So check us out on Friday. We're going to add a show this week, Jamie. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. All right, let's see. I know you before we get into the commitments and everything, Joe Bro says, what's good? Did you guys see the 247 blue chip ratio article? I know Jamie did, because Jamie loves talking about it and referencing it. So for everyone who doesn't know, this is a Bud Elliott creation. He created a blue chip ratio to track basically who has even a chance of winning a national title right now. I think this is, I mean, it's ranked true every single time, right? No one below 50%, I don't think, has ever won the national championship. And when I say 50%, that's 4 and 5 stars on your roster, right? So you have to be above 50% I think it was
a 4-year period. So it would be for this one, it would be 2020 to 2023.
Right. And so Notre Dame is sitting at, I think it was 65%, Jamie, which is higher than it's been. It's usually been in the 50s, 55%, 52%. And now that's gone up to 65%, which obviously that's what you want, right? Like that's what Notre Dame needs. When people talk about changing kind of what Marcus Freeman is doing to change the program and that sort of thing, getting that number up is very important. In the last couple of years, especially last year, I think they were at 79% or 80%. So that's really getting up there. Right now, granted, I think it's a little bit skewed because Alabama's number 1 this year, and they were in the 90s, I believe, or it was 85. What was the exact number for Alabama?
I think they're like 89 or 91. Or
89 or 90%. So, so the difference there is like, I think their 89 is a little bit different than Notre Dame's like 80 last year, right? So it's because they've got a bunch of 5 stars in there. And not just that, but they've got a bunch of like top.
Notre Dame wasn't 80 last year. So just
no. But I'm saying in last year's class, like not in the class itself. So if Notre Dame built like 4 straight classes of what last year was, they'd be at 80%. But that, like Notre Dame's got a lot of 4 stars in there, and Alabama's mixing in obviously a ton of 5 stars. So that's a different. So there's a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's a little bit misleading in that sense, right? 80% for Alabama would be different than Notre Dame's 80%, to put it, one kind of way, even though on the blue chip ratio, they would be equal.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think the one thing too with Alabama is that they sign more than anybody else. Like they sign numbers, but they also run off guys way more than anybody else. So they really run it more like a protein than anybody. So that's the kind of thing where they've had several big time busts, but they sign enough that it's like, because they hit whatever, right? So their rate, the hit rate for them doesn't have to be as good because they just sign more than anybody else, right? So anyways, people can go and look. I wrote last week, was it last week? Maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, where it was about on 6 thoughts, where I kind of went into how, I mean, it's a good whatever, like just total props to Bud for creating it. It's such a great idea, and obviously it's worked out well, and it's just true. It's just a sign of like how people have recruited, and really only in the playoff era, so 2014, right? The only team that has won that has been under 60% was Clemson in 2016. They're 52. Everybody else has been above 60. So really, you kind of want to get above 60. So that's good, obviously. One thing to make note of for Notre Dame, though, is that the 2020 and the 2021 class, those numbers, it's like 50% of blue chips in that class, in those classes. And it's like over 80 for the 2 most recent classes. So it's first and second year guys. It's different than when you're having your 3rd and 4th year guys, and that's most of your guys, right? Like it's like one of the reasons why that 2015 team was so talented was it had a lot of guys from that 2013 class that was, 5th overall, that they were in year 3, right? So they were like there. So that matters a lot, right? That matters a lot. So it's like, it's one of these things where it's good to kind of look at the kind of a baseline, but it's also like, a bit misleading. So like A&M too, even though they're like over, like they're like high 70s or something like that, right? But they lost so many guys. Yeah. So it's like one of these things. So I did the percent of the actual blue chip talent on the roster. So the guys who were still there right now, who they taking out all the transfers and then adding the transfers coming in, and then also adding, because guys have 5th year guys too, right? Like there are still 5th year guys out there. Like Notre Dame's got 6 of them. So that matters, right? And not all of them are like, I mean, they're not all just great studs or whatever, but they're all good players. They can help the team. So, and that, when you look at the actual percentage of blue chip talent on the roster, Bama, even better, 92%, but Georgia, 80%, Ohio State, 79%. Guess who's 4th? Notre Dame, 68%. So even higher. They have a more bump up because they've able to retain a lot of these guys, right? And you know, done a good enough job. Clemson 65%, Texas 65%, LSU 64%, Oklahoma 64%, A&M 61%, Penn State 58%, Oregon 58%, Michigan 56%, Florida 55%, USC 54%, Miami 54%. But like, let's be honest, there's a huge gap there between Bama, UGA, and Ohio State. That's kind of where it is. And then they're also like, they sign more of the top 50 guys, right? And that's kind of where it's at. And what Notre Dame wants to get to, and obviously you want to sign more top 50 guys, but you want to get closer to that 80% kind of range where you're having that, because then all of a sudden it's just your whole roster, the depth there. And then obviously you're going to have, if you're doing a good enough job evaluating and developing, you are going to get enough guys that are going to be like elite guys, elite players that can roll with those teams, right? When you have the right team. So I think things moving in the right direction. And right now, Notre Dame, you know, they got 12 of 18 in this class, right? So 67% or whatever, which will make them go up based on what the class that is leaving from last year. But, you know, I think that number is probably going to go up. It'll be over 70 by the time they finish the class.
Yeah. And the important part too is, you know, like Alabama, a lot of busts, but not at the quarterback position, you know, and that's Clemson, right? Like Clemson was kind of able to buck the trend of being over 60, 70% because of the fact that they had Deshaun
Watson and Lawrence back to back. Yeah.
Right. So that really matters. So, you know, if CJ Carr is what Notre Dame wants him to be and what everyone wants him to be, like, that's how you get there, right? That's how you kind of jump the line in that sense. So, Joe Bro, thanks for bringing that up. Something that it's always good to talk about. I need to highlight a rare Alexander Cruz positive comment about recruiting. Kedron Young, he committed to Notre Dame. He was a 4-star back out of Texas. He committed to Notre Dame. I think it was 2 days ago. Like my brain is
Monday night.
Monday night, like kind of out of the blue too. Like we didn't, you know, sometimes, you know, like at least he has a commitment date or something, like some sort of time or whatever. He just kind of tweeted it out. So that's always nice. So he's in the class. I agree with Xander. I like Kedron Young a lot. I like him more than Aeneas Williams. There's not a ton in it, and it kind of doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to make a comparison to that. I'm very excited about him as a player. He's the kind of guy who I could see getting, you know, he could be a 20 to 25 carry guy. He could. I don't think Notre Dame wants that. Just like, you know, Estime could get a random 25 carry game, or Diggs could get a random 25 carry game. Like, I think Kedron Young is that kind of player. I love his game. You know, I talked on the show on Monday, Jamie, I talked about how, you know, these guys who aren't seen as home run hitters, right, in the recruiting process. Like, I remember Kyron Williams was not talked about a home run hitter during the recruiting process. There he is with a 91-yard run to his name where he's circling the field and all those other things. 65-yard run against Clemson. A long catch and run against Duke, 70-plus yards, right? So he's got multiple home runs to his name without being a home run hitter. And I think Kedron Young could fit into that, right? And Tony Jones, you said a faster Tony Jones. Tony Jones has an 85-yard run to his name, right? So you don't have to be an elite speed guy in college to hit the home run, even though that's not, you know, the main part of your game. But I haven't talked to you about Kedron Young, Jamie, since he committed. So tell us about what Notre Dame is getting there and how he complements Aeneas Williams.
Yeah, I think he's that's what it is. He's the perfect complement to Aeneas Williams, because Aeneas Williams is kind of more of a hybrid guy. Not to say that he can't run inside and do some of those things, but he's more of a hybrid guy where he's going to be able to catch the ball in the backfield well. He's got really good hands. He's a good route runner. You know, they can line him up in the slot. He can do, you know, similar things to what Kyron Williams did. And I'm saying he's going to be exactly Kyron Williams, but he's got a similar skill set. And Young, Young is going to come in and he's going to be ready to play early. Like, he's going to be ready to play early, physically, definitely. But you already kind of see stuff with him, just in terms of, like, he looks like he's got a good he sets up blocks well. He's got good feet. He's got good vision. And I mean, he's a relentless runner. Here we go. Here's Kedron Young here. And I mean, this run is just like poetry in motion, because you're just like, look at this guy, just keep fighting. Like, the defense is like giving up on the play, right? And he turned that into like a 2-yard gain into like a 20-yard gain or whatever, right? Like, and that's just kind of what he can do. He's got that, but he's also got some of this too, where you can see like, okay, here's just one cut, go. And it's the main thing is, look, he didn't just go and burst and it was like right away.
Pulling
he
away.
He broke the tackle at the second level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he can go and be a guy who gets big plays, because he can break those tackles at the second and third level, right? And like right here, he's running away from people. He's not a burner, right? He's not a true burner, but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be, right? If you have all the other things to come with it. And I'm a big believer in yards after contact. That's huge. That's one of the things that made Logan Diggs so good. Like here, that he had a chance to get tackled there. That would have been like an 8-yard gain, right?
Yeah.
Instead, it's like a 68-yard gain. Like those are just huge plays. And I mean, he's already built like a guy who's ready to play right now. You can see some of the stuff later too, where you can see like, I mean, he's certainly not afraid of blitz pickup. Really, the only thing is when you see this kind of here, right? And obviously, he's not being used as a receiver, right? But he's not like, it's not the most natural receiver. Doesn't look like a guy who's going to be able to kind of win in a virus. But that's pretty much like a Estime, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much like a Estime. And you just have to do enough with him. And he can just be used in the screen game and things like that. But it's being able to maximize yardage, good feet, strength after contact, and he can be a closer. He can be a guy who comes into the end of the game and be a closer, and that's the main thing, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what his yards after contact were on the season, but it had to have been massive, because just look at all these runs where he's getting hit, like, within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they turn into huge plays.
Yeah, and that's that was something that Kyron was always really good at, is the contact. The contact was part of the play. It didn't end the play. You could bounce off it. I talked about it a lot on Monday as well. Like, he can use the contact as a propeller to get him away from other tackles, right? And that's like when people talk about like, oh, he's natural running back. Like, I think that's the sort of thing that people are referring to, where the contact is a given and he can use it to his advantage, rather than like, I'm always trying to avoid it. And this is where, like, a lot of guys like Chris Tyree, this is a problem that he has, where it's like the contact is not something that he can use as a weapon, right? He tries to avoid it, but if he gets hit, like, it's gonna end the play.
He just doesn't have good balance is the main thing.
Right.
Like, you have to have balance after contact.
Right. Yeah. And so that's a really good trait for a back to have. So look, it's a really good pickup for Notre Dame. I think it's someone that fans should be very excited about, especially, as you said, paired with Aeneas Williams. It's a good it's a good combination for those guys. And let's talk about Styles Prescod now. So he was someone that I think we felt like needed to be in the class, because it gives you that third guy. It gives you that tackle that you're looking for. It's like, you can look at him and say, okay, we are going to put him at tackle, and that's where we're gonna play him. Could he play other positions? Maybe, but I think that's what Notre Dame wants him to be. Is Notre Dame wants him to be a tackle. And then it gives you that 3, where it's like, we have 3, and now you can focus on Gerby Lambert. If it happens, that's great. How much they need him is kind of up to other people, but I think if Notre Dame was to end at 3, this is a good 3. They needed to close on Styles Prescod. They came in, it seemed like they had the lead, and obviously they left with the lead, and he committed to the program shortly after Kedron Young did. So I think this sets up Notre Dame in a good position to have a good class on the offensive line. Maybe not a great class, or maybe not one that, is ideal, but it's like not a disaster. If you only had 2, you're looking like in a really bad way. And especially because Styles Prescott was someone they targeted early. So they've been wanting him for a long time, Jamie. Tell us about Styles Prescott.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. They need to get him in the class, and then it gives them the luxury of like, well, if they land Gerby Lambert, that's great. But if they don't, they have Prescott in the class, and he's a very good prospect. I think he's got really good feet. You see him move and get to the second level really well. He's a guy who needs some technical work, but he's got good footwork. But like, I think one of the things, he's got some like technical work in terms of like his fit and all that. But man, he really like works to finish and sustain. And I would say that's probably like the thing that I have my biggest question marks with Lambert, is that he should dominate more and doesn't do a good enough job of sustaining blocks, and not even just finishing, like putting guys on the ground, because I think sometimes that can get overrated. I mean, it's a good thing if it happens, right, but it doesn't have to be the be all and end all. If you do your assignment, you make your block, like you did your job, you did a good job, and you do it at a high level. If you're moving people at the point of attack. And the thing is that you see a guy like Prescott fight. He's like a scrapper. He's a guy who will continue to fight and put guys, and he's got a little bit of that nastiness too, right? And yeah, and that's always good to see. And I think especially with Notre Dame and kind of what they want to be on offense, and how they're trying to be like this offensive line driven program, like, well, you got to have dudes like that. You absolutely have to have dudes like that, and he is one of those guys.
Yeah. And so it was an important recruit. They needed to land him. I think being the in-state too, like you want to close on the in-state guys. You especially if you're out there, especially if they're out there. So look, now they can really focus on Gerby Lambert, right? Whatever that means. I listening to you guys, Matt and you talk about him on Power Hour yesterday, I just don't. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. Christian had some good stuff on him, and I encourage everyone to check that out on irisportsdaily.com. Check out what Christian wrote. You just don't know. You don't know where he's at. Is he going to take these other visits to these other schools? We don't know yet. But I think, the fact that he took a visit to Notre Dame, I mean, that's important, right? He needed to come in, and he's scheduled to go to these other schools. Is he going to go to the other schools? We don't know. But he did make it to Notre Dame, so that's important. So people are going to want to check in on that. Jamie, part of the perils of this job and what we do is, when it comes to recruiting, things can change very quickly, right? Like we're talking about, how we feel about players a lot. And right, Jason Smith, I'm making a transition here. So hold on for 1 second. We talk about where things stand with a player, right? You can have information from the night before, and by the next day, that information is no longer operative, right? And so I'm talking now about Paul Mankey, because I talked to Matt a little bit on Sunday regarding him, and he was like, I like where Notre Dame is with him. We feel like Notre Dame is firmly in the lead. So I go on the show, talk about Paul Mankey, like Notre Dame's firmly in the lead. I get off the show, maybe like an hour after that, like 2 hours after that, talk to Matt. Matt's like, he might be going to Duke now. He might be like visiting Duke. I don't know about going to Duke, but he's going to make a visit to Duke. He really wants to go visit other schools. And obviously that changes things, right? Like that changes things a lot. Like if he leaves the trip and everyone feels like he's shutting it down and he'll go into decision mode, that's obviously very good for Notre Dame. If he's going to go on to visit Duke, that's going to be that changes, how people feel about it, right? So, so I kind of wanted to provide an update because I was super positive on him and on the show on Monday, and now everyone's kind of less positive on that. So I wanted to kind of put that out there for the record. Someone who is on campus now, or maybe is leaving now. He was supposed to come in June 4th and leave on the 6th, and that's Bronte Johnson, the athlete from Fort Wayne, Indiana. was someone who it didn't look like Notre Dame could take because there was some kind of off-field stuff, like mostly academic things that needed to get sorted out. Seems like they've been sorted out, right? Because he came on an official visit. Those things don't happen if you're not a take and you can't, make an offer, like a real offer and that sort of thing. So he's on campus. That looks like that's all been squared away. But going, before he kind of fell off the radar, I think people felt very good about him being in the Notre Dame class as a safety. He plays mostly wide receiver in high school, right, Jamie? We talked about this yesterday. He's mainly an offensive player, played one game at safety. Probably didn't really know what he was doing back there, and so that film isn't the greatest film that I've ever seen, but I think his skill set is obviously very well known, right? He's long, he's athletic. He goes up and gets the ball. He's very good with the ball in his hands as a wide receiver, Jamie. And I think Notre Dame coming out of this visit, I think Notre Dame is in a good spot. Matt reported that he will not be visiting Tennessee like he planned to. He might be going to Purdue this weekend. Purdue wants him at wide receiver, Jamie. Let's see if he takes that visit. I think Notre Dame's feeling really good about Tate Johnson right now. What do you project for him at safety? If that is, if he ends up in the Notre Dame class, because it's very hard, right? Like there's only really wide receiver film of him, some wide receiver and some corner. But how do you project? Here's a better question. How do you go about evaluating someone like this, who they're playing a different position and you have to project them into another position in college?
Well, one, he's been at Notre Dame camp, right? So
right.
He was at camp last year.
The staff has seen
him. Yeah, they've seen him and worked him out. So it's like one of these things where it's like they knew from then that they wanted him as safety. And he did play as a sophomore. He did play quite a bit as a safety. So you can find sophomore film of him playing safety, but he played more as on offense, and that's just whatever. That's the high school's choice. And I mean, it might even be his choice too, right? Like everybody wants to be the guy, right? Everybody, like I told you, like corners want to be receivers, safeties want to be corners. Everybody, that's what they always want, right? Everybody wants to be something else that they're not, right? It's like athletes want to be rock stars want to be athletes, right? So it might be the case with him, but I think one, he's a good receiver right now. I think his ceiling is higher as a safety, just because you don't just get many guys who are like 6'2", 6'3", long like him, who can run like him, right? He obviously has to do he's skinny right now. He's about $170. He's got physical development to do. So, but he's got the frame that he should be able to weigh close to 200 pounds, right? Like that shouldn't be an issue. He goes to a high school. They don't have they don't have the greatest facilities, the greatest field, like all that kind of stuff, right? So it's going to be like he's someone I think who can take a really big jump once he gets into the program with Notre Dame. So that's going to be helpful. And he just really has all the traits that you're kind of looking for, not just like the physical traits, right? But like in terms of athleticism and stuff, just like the way he can open up and move. And he's going to be a guy who has enough range. And like you said, Greg, in that one game, you can watch that game and be like, this guy's just lining up, and it's just like they're like, hey, go play safety today. Yeah. Like it didn't look like he had much direction.
And it didn't look like he really knew what he was supposed to be doing.
Yes. And when you do that, you don't play fast, right? Yeah. But anyone who's seen him knows he is fast, right? So from that sense, like I said, if I was going to, I said on Power Hour, I take just about all those other safeties that Notre Dame is recruiting. If I had to play a game tomorrow, I would say, yeah, I'll take this guy over Tate Johnson, right? But 3 years from now, I'm probably going to take Tate Johnson just because the ceiling's higher, right? And so he's going to be someone that probably takes some time. He's not going to be someone that I would expect to play immediately. In fact, it's probably like a good chance that he redshirts in year one at Notre Dame. But I think once this guy kind of specializes at safety, learns the position, his ceiling is extremely high.
Yeah. It's kind of like Isaiah Canyon at receiver.
Yeah,
Like
a little bit.
if Isaiah Canyon was Notre Dame's best receiver, like I would look at the class as a whole and be like, that's a big risk now. Whereas like, I don't want to say he's their third, but it's like Cam Williams, right? Like he's a 5-star player. Like, what you're getting in Cam Williams. He can play wide receiver. He's really good, right? Same thing with Micah Gilbert. Like these are wide receivers, right? And so there's kind of a buffer there where it's like Isaiah Canyon could honestly end up being the best receiver in the class just because of his size, because of his skill set, because of his physical traits. Like you could see that. And with Tay, let's say Notre Dame was to, sign or bring in with Tay Johnson, they bring in, let's say Jalen McClain, right? Who I really like, right? They bring in Jalen McClain and you bring in Tay Johnson and, we can get into Davis Andrews. I don't even view him as a 2024 guy. To me, he's a 2026. Right. So like people, if he ends up committing to Notre Dame, people are going to kind of freak out. Like I would not, just because he's not, I don't think he counts toward this class's numbers. That's just how I see it. But like if it's Jalen McClain and Tay Johnson and Kennedy Urlacher, like I know Jalen McClain can play safety, right? That's a good buffer there. It's not as good as like a fourth guy, right? So let's say, I don't know, Malcolm Ziegler or maybe even Paul Mankey. Let's see how that works out, if it does at all. But if it was Mankey, McClain, Tay, okay, got it. Good class, right? But if it's Bronte and Kennedy Urlacher, and then they see where they go. Like Oliver Miles, like now you have Oliver Miles and you have Bronte, who are like they're really good athletes, but like can they play safety? We don't know, and that is what kind of concerns me with kind of where that would be if that ends up being the case. We have to let it play out, obviously, and so that's kind of how I see all that playing out. We'll have to check in on how he feels coming out of the visit and how things go. I'm sure Matt will have some reporting. He's set to leave campus today, so there will be reporting on that. But I think all accounts are Notre Dame feels good about landing Bronte Johnson in the class. Xander says you can't take Andrews. I disagree. Why wouldn't they? Why not? Why would
literally just said why you could?
Why
he's not
would
a 2024 guy.
He's not a 2024. He's a 2026. It's like, to me, it's a no-brainer take.
Yeah,
you don't know.
It's not going to count.
Yeah, like it's not going to. It's a no-brainer. You have to take him. Why wouldn't you? Jason Smith likes Malcolm Ziegler. How do you feel about Malcolm Ziegler, Jamie? I haven't talked to you about him. How do you feel about Malcolm Ziegler?
I mean, he's got like some good. I think he's like good long speed. I like the size. I seen some of those testing numbers. I don't know. Like he's got some like really impressive testing numbers. He doesn't play that fast. So that is always something that I look at. Right. And then, I mean, he has a lot of production, but a lot of the interceptions he has on film are like gifts.
Yeah.
It's like, hey man, I'm just throwing it right to you. Right? Like to me, there's a big difference when you see like a guy, it's like, okay, there's a big difference between Kyle Hamilton coming from across the field against Florida State and like making that just ridiculous play, and the ball is thrown right to him. Right? There's a big difference there, and that's a lot. I mean, you don't see that. You don't see that with Ziegler as much. I don't know. I have some questions about him, and I thought he looked a little high hipped, little tight to me. But I mean, I think like he's intriguing, but I don't love him. Like he would be further down on the list. I think, just bringing it back quick to Andrews, and it's not just the 2026 thing. One, he's a good football player. I have questions about his speed, but if you think that he's going to be a linebacker, and he's going to, especially, and you're going to take him in 2026, then I actually really like it, because I think he actually could be a pretty good guy. And honestly too, if I was going to take him, and if say he was a 2024 guy, he's the guy you take instead of Kennedy Urlacher, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like skill set, because they are similar. Andrews is better, in my opinion. So that's, how they decide to do that. But yeah, like you would take him thinking that he's going to be a guy down the road, right? And that's the kind of how you would kind of look at it.
Yeah. And a lot of comments about like whether 2-year mission guys ever work out. It kind of doesn't. Well, first of all, Utah and BYU have rosters full of these guys. Like
a lot of them work out.
Of course they all work out. I mean, it's a common thing, right? It's like, just because it doesn't happen at Notre Dame, like that is a common thing to happen at those schools, right?
Yeah.
The other part is it doesn't matter. If it doesn't work out, then he goes somewhere else and you recruit somebody else.
Yeah.
It's 2026. Like, it does. It honestly does not matter.
It's like an NBA team signing a guy and stashing him in Europe for 2 years, and then if you take him with a second round pick and it doesn't work out, you're like, okay, yeah. If you took him as a first round pick, if he was like your top guy in the class, that's different, right? But that's not how it is. And I can just say from personal experience too. Like I played with a ton of guys who I played at Idaho State, played with a ton of guys who are LDS that took missions. Like I played with a bunch of older guys. There's a lot of guys who went and came back and you could see the difference. Like they were men when they came back.
Right.
And, some of these guys, there's some guys who didn't come back. That always happens, right? Who didn't come back and decide. And there were other guys who came back and it was like, oh my gosh, like this guy is just like a dude now. So, I mean, you don't know, but that's the whole point. You take a chance. And the other thing is, even if he came back and it didn't work out and he transferred out, like, okay, it didn't work out. Like, I don't know. So, and Jason Smith asked about Kanu Kia. He comes back at the beginning in January. So he's not going to be there for this season.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, as far as I know, he's going to come back to Notre Dame. And I think he has a chance to be, he's a guy that I'm actually super intrigued by when he comes back, because he was a guy that I think was going to I could see with like a couple of years of just like physical development, he was going to be something. And he's a heck of a ball player. And they offered his brother. So whenever which to me, they wouldn't offer his brother if they were like, nah, we don't want this guy back, right? So I think they want him back. He made his intentions known that he was going to come back. And the guys who are on his friends are still there, right? So like, I don't know, especially because of the timing of his when he left. So, he's going to be an intriguing guy. I don't know. I don't see any downside in taking a guy like Dave Sanders.
Yeah, I don't either. I really don't. And he's on campus right now, and he'll be leaving tomorrow. So that's what's going on with him. All right. So this weekend's visitors, Jamie. Some pretty big targets, right? First of all, defensive end Elijah Rushing. He'll be on campus this weekend. Linebacker Bradley Shaw, tight end Carter Nelson, and safety our safety prospect Oliver Miles. What do you think about Rushing, Jamie? Where do you see this headed? I'm not totally sure. I mean, I guess it's one of those things like we have to see after the visit and how it goes and where it is. I mean, how critical do you see him to the class, first of all? Just period.
I mean, I don't think he's like make or break in the class, but he's a stud. Like he's got physical traits that just, they don't normally sign guys like that. And I think he's just got massive potential. He's got potential to be like, a top 15 pick, right?
Yeah.
Like he's just built like that. He's got the physical traits. He's going to be a guy who has like, he's in that Stephon Tuitt, Aaron Lynch class of like, this guy can be that special, right? I think I can't remember where I said it somewhere where I was talking about like defensive linemen and defensive tackles, whatever. They're kind of like big men in basketball, where it's like they can be a bit enigmatic in terms of like, okay, is this guy going to play hard every play? Is this guy going to do this, whatever? But it's like, well, if you get the guy to play hard every play, it's like that guy is just an automatic difference maker. Right. And then if you get the guy to, even if you get a guy who like, isn't as dominant as you want him to be, but he can be dominant for these just like 5 plays that really like change a game, that's still a guy who is just extremely valuable. Yeah, I think to me, I think he's got as high as upside as any of the defensive linemen really in this class. There's obviously this really strong defensive line class, but he's right up there, right? Like he's a guy who has a chance to be really, really special.
Yeah, and it would be like just a big splash in the recruiting class, and just like kind of give a lot of, it would be a big deal just in the recruiting industry and that sort of thing, especially Xander's bringing up him and Justin Scott too. Like that's those types of things are important in recruiting. They just are, momentum. Yeah. Momentum
hype is the thing.
Yeah, it is. It really is like the bandwagon effect, right? Like everyone kind of knows about that. So big recruits on that end. And also, good football players, right? On the defensive line, very, very important positions to fill. Carter Nelson, tight end Carter Nelson is going to be coming in, Jamie. I think this is probably the one chance for Notre Dame to add a tight end to go along with Jack Larson. What do you think about him as a player? Do the two players complement each other in terms of, the way that they play on the field and how they can they both share the field at the same time? Do they have different kind of skill sets?
I don't know. I mean, they both could play at the same time. It's just they're both not going to be guys that step in and be like inline guys right away, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, pretty clear. And I think they're guys who are going to have to grow into the position, especially like Carter Nelson he's a basketball player. He plays in like 8-man football. Yeah. Like it's going to be a transition for him. Right. But he's like a freak athlete. Right. And huge, yak potential, just really, really, really great athlete. And he's kind of got, a little bit of, God, why am I, the Georgia tight end Bowers, right? He's got a little bit of Brock Bowers vibes in terms of his, athleticism. And I think like, it's kind of similar to Larson. So whatever, but I just think you just get two guys like that. And it's like, even though kind of like Gronk and Aaron Hernandez, and I know whatever people don't want to talk about him because he's a terrible person, but like, I'm just talking about the two tight ends together, whatever. Yeah. Take out the off the field terribleness, whatever. Mm-hmm. But like one of the things is like, oh, these guys like complement each other really well. But really it was more that both guys were weapons, because if Gronk was just an inline guy, if he only was a blocker, well, then who cares about having two tight ends, right? Like It's like you want to have two guys that you can like, man, we can do all these different things with, right? Like, and so I think you kind of get a little bit of that's the kind of possibilities that you can get. And plus you got to look at where kind of like Notre Dame is at with like, they just took, Flanagan in the previous class. And even though just because he's a beast and he is actually more in the Gronk type of size wise or whatever, right? And just some of the inline stuff, but I think he's going to surprise some people with his, the way he moves and catches the football too.
Yeah. Oliver Miles coming in. He's a safety prospect. I would like to know, and we won't know. So it kind of doesn't matter. This next weekend after this one is Father's Day weekend. Jalen McClain's set to come in. I really want Jalen McClain in the class. Notre Dame is not going to land DeJuan Lane. He's committed to Penn State. Notre Dame has moved on from Marquise Gallegos, much to my chagrin. And so I want Jalen McClain in the class personally. I don't know how the staff feels about it. I think he's a very good football player, just period. He has those kind of traits where he can play kind of all three safety positions. I feel like if Bronte commits to them, and if Oliver Miles wants to pull the trigger, like that would give them 3. Would they take 4? Would they take Jalen McClain at that point? Would they take Malcolm Ziegler at that point? Like, to me, Malcolm Ziegler, like, he's of the ilk of like Bronte and Oliver Miles, in that good athletes don't really know, like don't know about the safety thing. I think it's very easy for me to see Jalen McClain play safety, right? Like, I can see that. I know he can play. So I wonder if he has a spot, this isn't anything against Oliver Miles per se. I just, I want Jalen McClain in the class. And so I don't know.
I mean, I see that too. And that's why I think he's a guy whose floor is incredibly high. And it's not to say that he doesn't have a high ceiling either, but the floor is like, to me, he reminds me a lot of Julian Love. Just size wise, but also just like, I mean, this guy's, he's just a ball player, he's just a ball player. It's like, we're like, Julian Love, we're like, yeah, he was an All-American corner, but it was like, really, he's kind of good at everything. Like, that's what kind of made him good, was
happens to play corner.
He just happens to play corner. And that's why, I mean, he plays safety in the NFL, right? Like,
right.
And if it didn't work for Julian Love at corner at Notre Dame, he would have probably been the best safety they had in years. Like, that's just kind of what it would have been for him. I mean, you saw him play safety too, and I believe it was in that Army game too, triple option. He was fantastic then too. Miles is just like, it's the unknown because he is primarily a quarterback, right? He's primarily a quarterback for his high school. I mean, you can't deny that he is an exceptional athlete, right? Like, he had that triple jump, right? He had that triple jump that was like, it's like, hey, maybe this
elite level. It was like 48 feet. I mean, this was like a big. It's elite level athleticism.
Maybe this guy's the next Mike Conley Sr. It was like pretty. It was like pretty crazy, right? So, I think what would be really interesting to see is that, like, okay, I think like Minky isn't off the board or anything like that, right? That's the one thing. And I like Minky too. But it'll be interesting because it's kind of like Minky, if he wants to, it's like, you kind of got to go in now, because it's like, that's it. That was one of the benefits of like him coming early. And obviously they brought him in early because they like him, right? But it's like, well, then Oliver Miles is coming. And then whatever. And it's like, they can go that route if he doesn't want in. Right. So it's kind of like what Matt has been saying all the time, is that they were going to have to turn down guys. And that's kind of where they're at. I do think too, I like Jalen McClain, and he'd be a guy that I'd want in the class. So I don't know. Like, I just think, just in terms of like, I'm confident he's going to be a guy, like, his floor is DJ Brown, like, that's his floor. And
he's just a better athlete than that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, to be that kind of player where you're like, yeah, this guy's a good player. He's really helped Notre Dame, whatever. He's not he's not an All-American. He's probably not going to the league, but it's like, he's going to play and help. And it's like, and if you just look at safety in general, like, you can look at, say, like, okay, the top 5 safeties from 2019 class: Daxton Hill, Louis Cine, Jordan Battle, Nick Cross, Kyle Hamilton. Pretty good. Pretty good. Obviously you land whatever, but you go to like the next, like, 15 out of the next 20, and it's like, 7 out. It's a total crapshoot, right? Like, there's like, actually, it's like the next 25 guys. Like, it's very, very hard to. It's such it's like linebacker. We always talk about. It's such a difficult position to play. It's such a difficult position to play because you could be fast but not play fast.
Yeah.
Right. You need all these pieces there. And it's just like, and the guys who are just really, really exceptional have these really great recognition. They're really smart. One of the Kyle Hamilton, yes, guy's a freak, 6'4", super long pterodactyl run down things and have like crazy range, but he was also like the smartest guy. Like,
Yeah,
you kind of need all that combination.
I think it would be good if Notre Dame brought in a safety who played safety in high school, who actually played defense in high school. Like that would be good, right? Like I'm at like I love taking the athletes. I do. I do. They're good bets, but you do need someone can play the position, and so that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. But we'll see. We'll see, Jamie. Jason Smith's bringing up Luke Tolich. I think we should bring up the fact that Luke Tolich is putting down some times. He ran a 10.72, 21.85 in high school, like recently, and those are legit times for a big guy like that, right? Kyle Hamilton could not run sub 11, could not run sub 22. Right now, obviously, there's a difference there, but like, people talk about like Paul Mankey with like Kyle Hamilton like traits or whatever. Like, no, Luke Tolich has Kyle Hamilton like traits. Like those are the traits that you're talking about. So I think Jason Smith that's a good point. Like he's a good athlete. He's a good player. We'll see, right? Like he came from Montana. Not a lot of people know about their high school situation and how things are going. Or was it Wyoming, Jamie? Montana or Wyoming?
Wyoming. It was Wyoming.
Wyoming. So yeah, for some reason I was like, Montana doesn't sound right. Wyoming. So he's coming from Wyoming. It's same kind of thing as Montana, right? You just don't know what kind of level of football is out there. So we'll see. I'm keeping tabs with Jason Smith. I'm keeping tabs.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's at the very least, he's a guy that no one would ever be surprised if he ends up earning a scholarship at Notre Dame.
Yeah, like the first couple weeks in camp, right? And we start like Matt jumps on power and it's like, yeah, who might be good? Luke Tolich. Like that sort of thing. So yeah,
well, I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't even say that right away, but it's like that's something that's just like over time you're gonna hear like, man, Luke Tolich has been making a lot of plays.
Well, okay, we had this conversation. So it was about something else, but like Jack Kaiser. Like when he was first there, it's like he's not ready to play, but he might be good, And so like, I think if Jack Kaiser was in Wyoming, he would not have had a Notre Dame offer. He would have had to be the same type of player that Luke Tolich is. Like if Luke Tolich was in Indiana and going to the same high school as Jack Kaiser, I'll bet you he's a scholarship player for them, just like straight out, because he's local and you can see him and all those other things. And so like that's what I think. Like he's a Jack Kaiser caliber recruit, and Jack Kaiser is projected to be a starting football player for Notre Dame. He's played a ton of productive snaps for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I think could be there with Luke Tolich. All right, Jamie. We didn't talk about linebacker Bradley Shaw, who is also coming in, and I feel like it's would they take him and KVA? I know that there's not a lot of juice around KVA at this point, but would they take both of them?
What do you mean not a lot of juice around KVA?
Well, like right now, there's just a lot of buzz towards Ohio State at this point. And Matt talked about on Power Hour about, he needs to see how Ohio State does on the visit and how that all works out.
Yeah, I don't think that's like it's trending towards Ohio State. I just think it's like you just got to wait to see these visits. Like
right. So, but that's what I mean. Like okay, like Bronte. There was a lot of juice going in. Styles Prescod.
Oh, you mean you just like it's not like he's coming and like, oh, he's in the class. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's like there's not a lot of like that big, know.
See,
like,
this is why I had to ask this because Xander was asking
no problem.
It was confusing. You're acting like he was Ohio State hadn't wrapped up, I thought.
No. I just meant like there's a lot unknown with him right now.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I mean. Not a lot of
for
juice.
Sure. Visit's going to be huge. Visit's going to be huge.
Right. So would Notre Dame take both of these guys? Like let's say because KVA is not coming in until the weekend after, right? So would Notre Dame take both? Let's say they Bradley Shaw has a great let's say Bradley Shaw has a great visit I want to commit. Would they take both of them?
Okay. I think now you can probably hear that my mic went out. So just in case you can't hear.
With 55 minutes
right
with
at
us this time, Jamie. It's good.
But I would take both of them.
You think Notre Dame will, though?
I don't think they'd be bringing him up on the visit. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
So I just think, and also too, he's just of that level. He's of that level. I think that you would take him.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me about Bradley Shaw then, Jamie. What do you like about him?
I mean, he's definitely a Mike. I mean, he's a thumper, but he moves better than just a guy who's just going to be like a between the tackles type guy. Really good recognition. Just when you just see an SEC linebacker and you're like, yeah, that guy's a dude. You're like, you realize you're like, oh yeah, the SEC actually does have better athletes than most other conferences.
That's kind of where.
It came back.
Yeah, it came back. So that's where I would say, he's just of that caliber, where you're like, this guy's probably going to be, like he has the potential to be a high level starter at an SEC program, and just Notre Dame doesn't land enough of those guys.
Yeah,
linebacker, and that's why I think they wouldn't turn him down. Like, right? It's like not that whatever they ever had to make this decision with Jalen Sneed, but it's just like one of those things where you're just like, yeah, you're just going to take this guy no matter what, right? And he's, to me, he's like a top 100 level type of prospect, a guy too, where I think with you look at like, say, like a guy like Bodie Calhoun, who's a really nice athlete. But he's like someone that probably I see more as a Will. Maybe he can be a Mike. But this guy's like, you're like, oh, plug this guy in at Mike, and he's going to be, and KVA is obviously a guy who can play, either or, right? So, yeah, I would take him. I would take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And so this is where like it gets into like the Bodie Cahoon, like Teddy Rizak, and even Kennedy Urlacher conversation at that point. Don't take those guys and then have it be a numbers crunch. You know what I mean? Take them. That's fine. But then you got a guy like Bradley Shaw, you don't be turning him away for any reason. Same thing with KVA. Like KVA is kind of obvious. Like I think KVA, if he wants it, he's going to get a spot. But so just don't use them to turn guys away. Same thing with safety. Like we're talking about taking 4. Well, look, if Miles and Bronte and McLean all want to come, then take them. Take all of them. As a lot of people are saying in the chat, take them and figure it out later, right? Which is by the way, is the same thing with Davis Andrews. He's not a 2024. Take him. Figure it out later. Doesn't matter. So that's how I feel about that, Jamie. So I think those are good thoughts. We're gonna have to, Jamie. We're gonna have to get to the Irish invasion stuff. On another show.
I mean, a lot of those guys are going to be guys that are targets for Notre Dame going forward. So, I mean, we'll dive into those guys.
We'll dive into that. Yeah. And if you're really itching, if anyone's really itching to hear about that, check out Power Hour yesterday. They talked a lot about the Irish invasion guys. Jamie went over a whole bunch of players that he really liked. So check out Power Hour. It's on Apple Pods and Spotify and all those other things. Kenneth James, let me see if we can get to this quickly. I've heard the situation with Mankey isn't a concern with other visits as much as the possibility to safety other than Andrews may be in the fold when he gets ready to decide. Yeah. Like that's the thing. And that's why people, but the other part too, is I think that Mankey probably knows that, like if he knows like, hey, if I drag my feet, then
they make him aware.
Then it's like I could be out of the class. It's like that in itself almost pushes you towards Duke because it just does, right? Like I can't be rushed kind of thing. Now look, if Bronte doesn't pop, if Oliver Miles doesn't pop, and he moves on to the next week, and McLean and Ziegler don't either, then it's like, okay, maybe then. But I think by that point, I think there will be just a little bit more clarity. I think that's what everyone kind of counts on, that there will be a little bit more clarity there. So it's not that he's taking visits. It's just that he knows if you take visits, you might not have a spot. He's still doing it. Right. So that's the deal. Maybe Elko can leave for Notre Dame, Jamie, or Xander. You never know. All right. I think we'll leave it there, Jamie. Good show. Glad to have you back, bud. We'll be back. We'll be back on Friday. I'm going to be talking to Drew. I was just going to have it be me and Drew, Jamie. If you want to jump on that, you're obviously welcome. That would be great if you wanted to be on the show, but I know you got a lot of stuff going on, doing a lot of write-ups and that sort of thing. It's just going to be me and Drew. But hey, Jamie, if you want to jump on, you just let me know. We'll do a three-man pod there. So, but yeah, so we'll be back Friday. If Jamie and I will be back next week talking again about recruits. We'll be talking about visits. Maybe we'll be talking about commitments and all those other things. So you're going to want to tune in, hit and hustle, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. Check out irisportsdaily.com. Tons of information on everyone, 2025, 2024, scoop, info, all that good stuff. So check us out. Catch y'all on Friday, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.